The cigarette smoke hung thick in Palazzo Rosso, like fog over a cemetery. Red leather booths lined the walls, their surfaces worn smooth by decades of whispered conversations and blood money. In the back corner, past the dimmed chandeliers and nervous waiters, sat Vincent Torino. He was a man built like a bulldozer, wrapped in expensive silk. His fingers, thick as Cuban cigars, drummed against the white tablecloth, while he studied the menu he'd memorized 20 years ago. The wedding ring on his finger caught the light, a reminder of the family he'd built from other families' ruin. The door chimed. Torino didn't look up, but his bodyguard Tommy shifted beside him, hand moving instinctively toward his jacket. Bruce entered quietly, moving through the restaurant like smoke itself. He wore a simple black turtleneck and dark slacks. His footsteps made no sound on the checkered floor. "Mr. Torino." Vincent finally raised his eyes. They were the color of concrete, and just as warm. "The Chinaman," Torino said, setting down his menu. "I hear you've been making waves in my ocean." Bruce sat without invitation. "Your ocean, Hollywood, the film business, my business." Torino cut into his veal, pink juice pooling on the plate. "Word is, you're teaching certain people certain things, things that might make them difficult to control. I teach people to defend themselves." "Against who?" Torino's voice was silk wrapped around a razor. "Eh?" The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Even the kitchen fell silent. "Against fear," Bruce said. Torino chewed slowly, deliberately. "Fear keeps the world spinning, kid. Without it, everything falls apart. Order becomes chaos. Order built on fear isn't order. It's just a bigger prison." The older man smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "You know what I think? I think you don't understand how deep these waters run. How many people I've had to teach about respecting boundaries. And I think you don't understand that some people can't be taught to bow." Torino set down his fork with surgical precision. "Everyone bows, kid. It's just a matter of the right pressure point." Bruce stood, leaving a 20 on the table. "Enjoy your meal, Mr. Torino." As he walked away, Torino called out softly, "Give my regards to your students." The words followed Bruce into the night like a curse. Midnight in downtown Los Angeles felt like the bottom of a coal mine. Bruce walked through the warehouse district, his footsteps echoing off concrete and steel. The air tasted of motor oil and decay. He'd chosen this route deliberately, away from streetlights, away from witnesses. If Torino's men came, and he knew they would, better here than near his students. The attack came from 3 directions simultaneously. Tommy emerged from behind a truck, nickel-plated .38 already drawn. 2 other shapes materialized from the shadows, one tall and lean like a scarecrow, the other built like a prize fighter gone to seed. "Nothing personal," Tommy said, his Queen's accent thick as molasses. "Just business." Bruce's hands remained at his sides. "It doesn't have to be like this." "Yeah, it does." The gunshot split the night like breaking glass. Then another, and another. Bruce crumpled to the asphalt, dark blood spreading beneath him like spilled ink. His eyes stared at the star-choked sky, seeing nothing. Tommy walked over, kicked him once to be sure. "Torino sends his regards." They dragged the body to the industrial dumpster behind the cannery, threw it in among the rotting fish heads and broken bottles. The lid slammed shut with the finality of a coffin. "Clean this up," Tommy told the others, "and keep your mouths shut." By dawn, the only evidence was a dark stain on the pavement that could have been anything. Samuel Kovac had been invisible for so long, he'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen. 20 years on the streets had weathered him down to bone and sinew, his face a roadmap of every bad decision that had led him here. He pulled aluminum cans from the dumpster with practiced efficiency, sorting them by weight and condition. Rent was whatever he could scrape together, and the recycling center paid enough for coffee and maybe a sandwich. His hand touched something soft. Wrong kind of soft. He recoiled, then looked closer. In the gray morning light filtering through the alley, he could see a man's jacket. Expensive. And beneath it, Jesus Christ! Samuel had seen enough bodies in his former life to know death when he saw it. But this one was breathing, barely. Shallow rattles that sounded like autumn leaves scraping across concrete. The man was young, Asian, with blood matting his black hair and soaking through his clothes. 3 bullet holes, one in the shoulder, one in the side, one that had creased his skull and knocked him unconscious. Samuel looked around the empty alley. No one. No sirens. No help coming. He should walk away? Should pretend he'd never seen anything. Getting involved with other people's violence had destroyed his life once before. But the man's eyes opened, brown and clear and full of pain. "Please," Bruce whispered. Samuel cursed under his breath. Then he began pulling Bruce from the dumpster, careful not to worsen the wounds. "Don't you die on me," he muttered. "I got enough ghosts already." Samuel's home was a forgotten maintenance shed beneath the 4th Street Bridge, invisible to the world above. He'd reinforced the walls with scavenged metal, installed battery-powered lights, and carved out a life from the city's discarded bones. Bruce lay on a cot made from shipping pallets and old blankets. Samuel worked over him with the methodical precision of someone who'd done battlefield surgery. He'd learned these skills in a different life, when he wore tailored suits instead of rags. "Bullet went clean through your shoulder," Samuel said, cleaning the wound with stolen antiseptic. "Side wound's nastier. Tore up some muscle but missed the important bits. Head wound looks worse than it is. You're lucky they used small caliber." Bruce gritted his teeth as Samuel stitched. "Lucky isn't the word I'd use. You're alive. That's more than most people get when Vincent Torino wants them dead." Bruce's eyes sharpened despite the pain. "You know Torino." Samuel paused in his work. "Used to, long time ago." "Used to how?" "Used to keep his books. Used to count his money. Used to think I was part of something bigger than myself. Samuel's hands resumed their careful work. Turns out, I was just another number on a ledger. What happened? I got old, got careless, started asking questions about where all that money came from. Torino decided I knew too much. Samuel's voice went flat. Sent some boys to my house one night. Told them to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Bruce waited. They killed my wife first. Made me watch. Then my little girl, 8 years old, wore a yellow dress with flowers on it. Samuel tied off the last stitch with steady hands. Left me alive so I'd remember, so I'd know what happens to people who forget their place. And you never went to the police. Samuel laughed, but it came out broken. Half the cops in this city cash Torino's checks. The other half are too scared to do anything about it. He met Bruce's eyes. There's no justice in this world, kid. Just survival. There has to be another way. Maybe. But I've been looking for 20 years, and all I found was the bottom of a bottle and the underside of a bridge. Bruce closed his eyes, but Samuel could see him thinking. Even half dead, the man's mind wouldn't stop working. Rest now, Samuel said. We'll figure out tomorrow, when tomorrow comes. But he could already see tomorrow in Bruce's eyes, and it looked like trouble. 3 days passed before Bruce could sit up without the world spinning. Samuel fed him thin soup and weak coffee, kept the wounds clean, and watched the young man's strength return like water filling a well. On the 4th night, Bruce finally asked the question Samuel had been dreading. Tell me about Torino's operation. You should forget about Torino. Disappear. Change your name. There's a whole world outside Los Angeles. He'll find me eventually, and he'll hurt people I care about to draw me out. Bruce's voice was steady as stone. The only way this ends is if he goes down. Samuel studied him in the flickering light. You planning to kill him? No. Because if you are, I can tell you it won't work. I tried that route, spent 2 years planning the perfect revenge. You know what I learned? Kill one monster, 2 more take its place. Nothing changes, except the name on the door. Then what do you suggest? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. You really want to hurt Vincent Torino? Don't kill his body. Kill his empire. How? Expose him. All of it. The murders, the bribes, the fear. Shine a light so bright he can't hide anymore. Samuel reached into a rusted coffee can and pulled out a small notebook, pages yellowed with age. I kept records, names, dates, amounts, 20 years of evidence. Bruce took the notebook, flipped through pages of meticulous handwriting, names of judges, politicians, police captains, records of payments, orders, executions. This is enough to bring down half the city. It's enough to bring down the right half, the half that lets men like Torino exist. Samuel's eyes glittered in the lamplight. But you'd need more than my word. You'd need testimony from people who were there, people who saw the violence firsthand. Witnesses. Terrified witnesses, people who've spent years keeping their mouths shut because they knew what happened to talkers. Samuel leaned forward. But maybe, if they knew Torino couldn't hurt them anymore, Bruce understood. A coordinated strike, multiple witnesses coming forward simultaneously, too many for him to silence. It would take time, careful planning, and it would be dangerous. If Torino catches wind of it, he'll burn the whole city down to stop you. How long do you think we have? Samuel considered. He thinks you're dead. That buys us maybe a month before he starts asking questions. After that, he shrugged. Bruce closed the notebook, held it against his chest like a prayer book. Then we'd better get started. The next 2 weeks moved like a careful dance. Bruce, wearing a knit cap to hide his healing head wound and sunglasses to cover the bruises, began reaching out to Samuel's contacts. Maria Santos worked as a maid in Torino's house. She'd seen the boss beat a man to death with a fireplace poker 3 years ago. The police report called it suicide. Joey Marchetti drove truck for Torino's import business. He'd watched them unload crates of heroin at the docks, stamp them with fake medical supply labels, ship them to schools across the city. Dr. Elizabeth Chen worked the emergency room at County General. She'd sutured knife wounds and bullet holes for Torino's soldiers, kept her mouth shut when they threatened her children. One by one, Bruce found them. One by one, he showed them Samuel's notebook. One by one, he offered them something they hadn't felt in years: hope. "You're asking us to sign our death warrants," Maria said during their meeting in a dim cafe on Olvera Street. "I'm asking you to take back your lives," Bruce replied. "All of you, together. He can't kill everyone at once. Can't he?" Joey's hands shook as he lit another cigarette. "You don't know what he's capable of." "I know what you're capable of, all of you. You've survived his reign of terror for years. That takes more courage than most people ever find." Dr. Chen set down her coffee cup with surgical precision. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Simultaneous testimony, multiple jurisdictions, FBI, state police, federal prosecutors. Enough evidence to bury him and his organization so deep they never crawl back out. And if he retaliates, he'll be in federal custody by the time the sun sets." The three witnesses looked at each other, decades of fear warring with the possibility of freedom. Finally, Maria spoke. "When do we start?" Special Agent Sarah Kellner had been investigating organized crime for 12 years, long enough to recognize the real thing when she saw it. The man sitting across from her desk didn't look like much. Medium height, quiet voice, careful movements that suggested recent injury. But the evidence he'd laid out was devastating. "How did you acquire these records?" she asked, leafing through photocopies of Samuel's notebook. "From someone who wants justice more than he wants revenge," Bruce said. "This source, will he testify?" "He will." Kellner studied the pages: bank records, payment schedules, coded communications, names of federal judges, state senators, police commissioners, if even half of it was accurate. You understand the scope of what you're alleging? This implicates dozens of public officials, including people I've worked with personally. I understand that corruption doesn't survive in sunlight. And I understand that rushing into something this big gets good people killed. She leaned back in her chair. Tell me about the witnesses. Bruce outlined their stories. The maid, the truck driver, the doctor. Samuel's testimony. The coordinated approach they'd planned. How do I know this isn't some elaborate setup? That Torino isn't using you to flush out federal agents he suspects? Because if I were working for Torino, you'd already be dead. The simple statement, delivered without emotion or threat, sent a chill through the room. Kellner was quiet for a long moment. We'll need at least 2 weeks to prepare. Coordinate with multiple agencies. Arrange protective custody. Verify the evidence. 2 weeks might as well be 2 years. Torino's starting to ask questions about my death. Once he realizes I'm alive, then you'd better hope he doesn't find out. She stood, gathered the papers. Agent Morrison will be your primary contact. He'll coordinate the witness interviews and arrange security. Bruce rose to leave, then paused. Agent Kellner, some of the names in that book belong to people you trust. People you've worked with for years. When this breaks, it's going to feel like betrayal. If they're dirty, then they already betrayed me. I'm just returning the favor. But as Bruce left her office, Kellner stared at the evidence folder and wondered how many friends she was about to lose. Vincent Torino sat in his study, surrounded by the trappings of respectability. Leather-bound books he'd never read, oil paintings of ancestors he'd never met, awards from charities that laundered money for his operations. Tommy stood beside him, nervousness radiating from every pore. Boss, we got a problem. I gathered that from your face. What kind of problem? The Chinaman. He ain't dead. Torino's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Explain. Johnny was doing his rounds, checking the usual spots. Heard through the grapevine that someone's been asking questions, showing around pictures, talking to our people. What kind of questions? The wrong kind. About numbers, shipments, payments, old business. Tommy shifted his weight. And boss? Dr. Chen didn't show up for her regular appointment yesterday. Neither did Maria Santos. Torino stood slowly, walked to the window overlooking his manicured garden. How many people know we tried to kill him? Just us 3. Me, Sal, and Mickey. And we ain't talked. No, but someone did. Torino turned back to Tommy. Find them. All of them. The doctor, the maid, the truck driver. Anyone who might have opened their mouth. Bring them to the warehouse. What about the Chinaman? Him too. But carefully this time. I want to look him in the eye before I put a bullet in his brain. As Tommy left to gather the soldiers, Torino returned to the window. 30 years he'd built this empire, brick by bloody brick. He wasn't about to let some idealistic martial artist tear it down. But deep in his gut, beneath the anger and the pride, Vincent Torino felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. The warehouse smelled of rust and old blood. Maria Santos knelt on the concrete floor, hands zip-tied behind her back, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Chen sat beside her, clinical composure cracking under the weight of terror. Joey Marchetti hung from chains attached to an overhead beam, unconscious from Sal's enthusiastic questioning. Torino circled them like a shark, scenting blood. 20 years you people worked for me. 20 years I put food on your tables, kept the wolves away from your doors. And this is how you repay me? We never said nothing, Mr. Torino, Maria whispered. Please, I got kids. You got kids because I let you have kids. You live in this city because I let you live in this city. He stopped in front of her, crouched down. But now you're talking to federal agents. Now you're showing them my private business. I don't know what you... The backhand sent her sprawling. Dr. Chen flinched but held her ground. Don't lie to me, Maria. I know about Agent Kellner. I know about the notebook. I know about your new friend with the Chinese eyes. Torino straightened. Where is he? I don't know. Another blow. Blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. Boss! Torino turned. Tommy stood in the warehouse doorway, hand resting on his gun. He's here. Bruce walked in alone, hands visible and empty. He moved with the careful balance of a man walking a tightrope over an abyss. You should have stayed dead, Torino said. I tried. It didn't take. Well, let's give it another shot. Torino nodded to his men. String him up next to the truck driver. Before you do that, Bruce said, you might want to know about the recording devices. Everything stopped. What recording devices? Torino asked quietly. Bruce smiled, the first time anyone had seen him do so since the restaurant. The ones hidden throughout this warehouse, the ones that have been transmitting our entire conversation to federal receivers for the last 10 minutes. Torino's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your watch. Agent Kellner said they'd move in exactly 10 minutes after the transmission started. That would be... Bruce glanced at his wrist. Right about now. The sound of vehicles surrounded the warehouse. Engines, doors slamming, shouted commands through megaphones. Federal agents, this is a raid. Come out with your hands up. Tommy drew his gun, but Bruce was already moving. 20 years on the streets had taught Samuel many things, including how to move silently through shadows. He appeared behind Tommy like a ghost, striking with the precision of a man who'd once been Torino's bookkeeper and knew exactly where every nerve cluster lay. Tommy dropped like a stone. Sal reached for his weapon, but Bruce flowed across the warehouse floor like water over stones. A quick combination of strikes, simple, efficient, devastating, and Sal joined his partner in unconsciousness. Throughout it all, Torino stood frozen, watching his empire crumble around him. The warehouse doors burst open. Federal agents in tactical gear flooded in, weapons drawn, voices sharp with authority. "Vincent Torino, you're under arrest." As they cuffed him, Torino locked eyes with Bruce. "You think this changes anything? You think taking me down stops what I built?" "No," Bruce said quietly, "but it's a start." Agent Kellner supervised the arrest, her expression grim but satisfied. The evidence they'd gathered, testimony, recordings, financial records, would dismantle Torino's organization from top to bottom. As they led the crime boss away, he called back over his shoulder, "This isn't over." Bruce watched the man disappear into the back of a federal vehicle. "Yes," he said to the empty air, "it is." 6 months later, Samuel Kovacs sat in a small apartment above a bookstore on Vermont Avenue. The space was clean, furnished with second-hand furniture and new hope. On the kitchen table, the morning newspaper carried headlines about the continuing trials of Torino's associates. A knock at the door interrupted his coffee. He opened it to find Bruce, wearing a crisp white shirt and carrying a bottle of wine. "How's the new life treating you?" Bruce asked, stepping inside. "Strange, quiet, clean." Samuel gestured to the newspaper. "See, they got Judge Morrison yesterday. Last of the big fish." Kellner's thorough. They sat at the small table, and Samuel poured 2 glasses of wine. "You know, I never did thank you properly." "For what?" "For giving me a reason to remember who I used to be. Before the fear. Before the hiding." Bruce raised his glass. "To who we used to be. And who we're becoming." They drank in comfortable silence. Outside the window, Los Angeles continued its eternal dance. Sirens in the distance, traffic humming past, the city's heartbeat steady and strong. "What's next for you?" Samuel asked. "Teaching. Students who want to learn more than just how to fight." "Students like Maria and Joey?" Bruce nodded. Both witnesses had emerged from protective custody transformed. Not just survivors, but advocates. Maria had started a support group for victims of organized crime. Joey was working with federal agents to identify other trafficking operations. And Dr. Chen opened that free clinic she always talked about, Bruce added. "Turns out courage is contagious." Samuel smiled. The first genuine smile he'd worn in 20 years. "You realize what you did, don't you? You didn't just take down Torino. You showed people they could stand up, fight back, win. "We showed them," Bruce corrected. "All of us together." The afternoon light slanted through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. In the distance, church bells marked the hour. Not an ending, but a beginning. Samuel raised his glass again. "To justice without revenge. To strength without violence. To the courage of ordinary people doing extraordinary things." They finished their wine as the sun set over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of redemption. In the end, Vincent Torino had been right about one thing. Everyone bows eventually. But sometimes, Bruce thought, they bow not to fear, but to something greater than themselves. Sometimes they bow to hope. This story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, or actual events, is purely coincidental.